Abstract, contemporary organizations face an unprecedented demographic complexity. Up to 6 distinct generational cohorts now coexist in the workplace. From traditionalists born before 1946 to Generation Alpha entering internships and early career roles. This multigenerational convergence creates both strategic opportunities and operational challenges for leaders navigating divergent communication preferences, career expectations, technological fluencies, and value orientations. Research demonstrates that generational diversity, when managed effectively, enhances innovation, knowledge transfer, and organizational adaptability, yet poorly managed generational friction erodes engagement, accelerates turnover, and constrains collaboration. This article synthesizes evidence from organizational behavior, human resource management, and leadership scholarship to examine the contemporary multi-generational workforce landscape, quantify its organizational and individual impacts, and present evidence-based interventions for fostering intergenerational collaboration. Drawing on case examples spanning healthcare, technology, manufacturing, and professional services, the article offers practitioners a structured framework for building inclusive, high-performing teams that leverage generational diversity as a competitive advantage rather than a divisional liability. In early 2024, a Fortune 500 manufacturing firm's employee engagement survey revealed a troubling pattern. Collaboration scores plummeted when teams spanned more than 3 generational cohorts, with particular friction emerging between baby boomers nearing retirement and Generation Z employees in their first professional roles. Exit interview data confirmed the survey findings. 35% of departing Gen Z employees cited generational misalignment as a primary factor in their decision to leave, while 28% of boom-aged managers reported frustration with unrealistic expectations from younger colleagues. This scenario, far from unique, reflects a defining challenge of contemporary organizational life, leading a workforce more generationally diverse than at any point in modern history. For the first time, organizations routinely employ members of 6 distinct generational cohorts simultaneously. Traditionalists, born 1925 to 1945, though rare, remain in senior advisory or governance roles. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964, occupy many executive and senior technical positions while approaching retirement. Generation X, 1965 to 1980, comprises much of middle management. Millennials or Generation Y, 1981 to 1996, now constitute the largest segment of the workforce. Generation Z, 1997 to 2012, enters as digital natives with distinctive career expectations. And Generation Alpha, 2013-present, begins appearing in internships and apprenticeships, Democ. 2019. Each cohort brings formative experiences shaped by distinct economic conditions, technological landscapes, and socio-cultural movements, from the post-war prosperity that shaped boomer values to the digital immersion that defines Gen Z's worldview. The practical stakes are considerable. Organizations that successfully leverage generational diversity report enhanced innovation through diverse perspectives, improved knowledge retention via structured intergenerational mentorship, and stronger succession planning, Lyons and Curran, 2014. Conversely, organizations that fail to address generational dynamics experience elevated turnover costs, estimated at 50 to 200% of annual salary per departure, reduced collaborative efficiency, and diminished employer brand appeal across demographic segments, Bauchi and Glynn. 2012. As workforce longevity extends and entry ages diversify, the imperative to build generationally inclusive cultures intensifies. This article examines the evidence base for leading multi-generational teams effectively, moving beyond generational stereotypes to identify actionable, research-informed practices that drive organizational performance while supporting individual well-being across age cohorts. The multigenerational workforce landscape defining generational cohorts in contemporary organizations. Generational cohorts represent groups of individuals born within specific time ranges who share formative experiences during critical developmental periods, particularly adolescence and early adulthood, that shape collective values, attitudes, and behavioral tendencies. Mannheim, 1952. While individual variation within cohorts often exceeds variation between cohorts, a crucial caveat against overgeneralization, research identifies meaningful patterns in work-related preferences and expectations across generations. Costanza et al. 2012. The 6 cohorts currently active in the workforce include Traditionalists, silent generation, 1925 to 1945, shaped by World War II and post-war economic expansion, characterized by respect for authority, organizational loyalty, and preference for hierarchical structures. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964, influenced by civil rights movements and economic prosperity, associated with work-centric identities, competitive achievement orientation, and face-to-face communication preferences. Generation X, 1965 to 1980, formed during economic uncertainty and rising divorce rates, linked to self-reliance, work-life balance emphasis, and skepticism toward institutional authority. Millennials, Generation Y, 1981 to 1996, developed amid technological acceleration and globalization, noted for collaborative work styles, purpose-driven career choices, and digital fluency. Generation Z, 1997 to 2012, raised entirely in the digital age with social media ubiquity, distinguished by pragmatic career orientations, diversity expectations, and multimodal communication habits. Generation Alpha, 2013, present, currently in education but beginning to enter internships, anticipated to exhibit even greater technological integration and global consciousness. Critical to effective multigenerational leadership is recognizing these patterns as tendencies rather than deterministic traits. Research by Costanza and colleagues, 2012, found that within generation variance on work values often exceeds between generation variance, suggesting that individual differences, organizational context, career stage, and life circumstances frequently matter more than birth year alone. Nevertheless, cohort-level patterns provide useful frameworks for understanding diverse workplace expectations when applied judiciously. Prevalence, drivers, and distribution. Multiple demographic and economic forces have converged to create the contemporary multigenerational workforce. Understanding these drivers helps leaders anticipate future workforce composition and plan accordingly. Extended workforce participation represents the primary driver. In the United States, labor force participation rates for workers aged 65 and older have increased dramatically, rising from 12.8% in 2000 to 18.6% in 2020, with projections reaching 21.7% by 2030, Tusi and Torpy, 2017. This trend reflects multiple factors: improved health and longevity, elimination of mandatory retirement ages, inadequate retirement savings, elimination of traditional pension systems, and many individuals' desire for continued purpose and engagement. Simultaneously, delayed workforce entry among younger cohorts extends the generational span. Rising educational attainment, with bachelor's degree completion increasing from 25% of 25-year-olds in 1995 to 39% in 2021, delays full-time employment. National Center for Education Statistics. 2022. Graduate education, internships, and portfolio career exploration further postpone traditional career establishment, meaning organizations increasingly employ both 22-year-old entry-level workers and 72-year-old senior contributors. Demographic shifts in birth rates also concentrate specific generations in the workforce. Millennials now comprise approximately 35% of the U.S. Workforce, the largest single cohort, while Generation Z already represents nearly 18% and continues growing rapidly. Fry. 2020. Combined with baby boomers who delay retirement, organizations frequently manage teams spanning 4 or 5 active generations simultaneously. The distribution varies considerably by industry and role. Knowledge-intensive sectors, technology, professional services, healthcare, tend toward greater generational diversity in individual teams, as specialized expertise retains older workers while growth demands attract younger talent. In contrast, physically demanding industries experience more age-segregated workforces. Geography matters too. Urban innovation hubs skew younger, while rural and manufacturing regions retain higher proportions of older workers. For organizational leaders, these patterns mean generational workforce management is not a temporary challenge but an enduring structural feature. The sixth-generation workforce will likely persist for decades, requiring sustained capability development rather than short-term accommodation. Organizational and individual consequences of generational diversity. Organizational performance impacts. Research on generational diversity's performance effects reveals a nuanced picture. Properly managed, generational diversity enhances organizational outcomes. Poorly managed, it constrains performance and elevates costs. Innovation and problem-solving benefits emerge when organizations successfully integrate diverse generational perspectives. Berm and colleagues, 2014, found that age-diverse teams generated more innovative solutions to complex problems, with heterogeneity facilitating creative abrasion between established mental models and novel approaches. The mechanism appears cognitive. Generationally diverse teams access broader knowledge reservoirs, challenge untested assumptions more readily, and synthesize traditional wisdom with contemporary techniques. Organizations reporting systematic intergenerational collaboration practices demonstrated 23% higher innovation metrics compared to age-homogeneous competitors in a study of European firms. Baxjelner and Veen. 2013. Knowledge transfer and retention represents another critical benefit. As baby boomers retire, organizations risk losing institutional knowledge, technical expertise, and relationship networks accumulated over decades. Structured intergenerational mentoring, examined in detail below, mitigates this risk. Harvey, 2012, documented that organizations with formal reverse mentoring programs, pairing younger employees as technology mentors with senior leaders, experienced 31% faster adoption of digital tools while simultaneously improving senior leader retention through renewed learning engagement. However, collaboration friction and communication breakdowns impose costs when generational differences remain unaddressed. Glazer and colleagues, 2019, identified that generationally diverse teams without specific inclusion training exhibited 18% lower trust scores and 22% reduced collaborative efficiency compared to baseline expectations. The friction manifests in multiple ways: miscommunication across preferred channels, email versus instant messaging, conflicting work style preferences, structured versus flexible scheduling, and divergent feedback expectations, formal annual reviews versus continuous real-time input. Turnover costs escalate when generational inclusion fails. Millennials and Generation Z exhibit significantly higher turnover rates when experiencing generational exclusion or stereotype threat. Deloitte's 2023 Global Millennial and Gen Z survey found that 49% of millennials and 56% of Gen Z respondents who left jobs within 2 years cited workplace culture incompatibility as a primary reason, with generational misalignment frequently underlying culture concerns. Given that replacement costs range from 50% to 200% of annual salary depending on role complexity, generational-driven turnover represents substantial economic impact. Bauchi and Glynn. 2012. Employer brand and talent attraction increasingly depend on demonstrated generational inclusivity. Organizations recognized for multigenerational excellence, through awards, rankings, or employee testimonials, access broader talent pools. LinkedIn research indicates that 76% of Gen Z candidates and 68% of millennial candidates research workplace age diversity before applying, while 42% of candidates over 55 specifically seek age-friendly employers. LinkedIn Talent Solutions 2022. Individual well-being and stakeholder impacts beyond organizational metrics. Generational workforce dynamics profoundly affect individual employee experience, well-being, and development. Psychological safety and belonging suffer when employees perceive age-based stereotyping or exclusion. Ng and Feldman, 2012, documented that workers experiencing age discrimination, whether as too young and inexperienced, or too old and inflexible, reported 34% lower psychological safety scores, 41% reduced organizational commitment, and elevated stress biomarkers. The experience of stereotype threat, where individuals fear confirming negative age-based stereotypes, impairs cognitive performance and decision quality. Lamont et al. 2015. Career development and growth opportunities become constrained in generationally segregated environments. Younger workers miss mentorship from experienced colleagues, limiting skill development and organizational knowledge acquisition. Conversely, older workers excluded from emerging technology projects or innovation initiatives experience deskilling and reduced employability. Coolidge and colleagues, 2011, found that organizations practicing age-inclusive development, offering training, challenging assignments, and advancement opportunities across all age groups, retained employees 2–3 years longer on average than age-segregated developers. Work-life integration and flexibility needs vary substantially across life stages and generations, though not always in stereotypical ways. While conventional wisdom suggests younger workers prioritize flexibility while older workers prefer stability, empirical evidence reveals more complexity. Meriach and colleagues, 2010, found that work-life balance importance showed no significant generational difference. Instead, life stage factors, caregiving responsibilities, health conditions, educational pursuits, better predicted flexibility needs. Organizations assuming generational stereotypes when designing flexibility programs consequently mismatch offerings to actual needs. Purpose, meaning, and engagement emerge through different pathways across generations, yet remain universally important. Twenge, 2010, research identified that while millennials and Gen Z more frequently articulate explicit purpose expectations during recruitment, baby boomers and Gen X workers exhibit equally strong purpose orientation, often expressed through different language, commitment, contribution, legacy. Organizations that facilitate intergenerational dialogue about shared purpose report higher engagement across all cohorts. For organizational stakeholders beyond employees, customers, patients, clients, citizens, generationally diverse workforces offer expanded perspective-taking and improved service delivery. Healthcare organizations with age-diverse clinical teams better address patient needs across life stages. Financial services firms with multi-generational advisors connect more effectively with diverse client demographics. And educational institutions with faculties spanning generations model lifelong learning for students. Evidence-based organizational responses structured intergenerational mentoring programs. Traditional mentoring assumes knowledge flows from senior to junior employees. But contemporary evidence supports bidirectional and multidirectional mentoring models that leverage each generation's distinctive capabilities. Reciprocal mentoring pairs individuals across generational lines for mutual learning. Senior employees share organizational knowledge, industry expertise, and strategic perspective while receiving mentorship on emerging technologies, contemporary communication platforms, and evolving market trends from younger colleagues. Murphy, 2012, evaluated reciprocal mentoring programs across 47 organizations and found that participants reported 28% improvement in cross-generational understanding, 34% increase in technological adoption among senior mentors, and 41% enhancement in strategic thinking among junior mentors compared to non-participants. Effective reciprocal mentoring programs incorporate several design features, key structural elements, formal matching processes that consider learning objectives, personality compatibility and role diversity rather than assuming any senior-junior pairing works. Structured meeting frameworks with recommended frequencies, typically bi-weekly. Discussion topics and goal-setting templates that prevent relationships from becoming undefined or inconsistent. Clear duration and renewal points, commonly 6 to 12-month commitments with explicit continuation decisions, that create psychological safety around relationship boundaries. Training for both parties on effective mentoring skills, generational communication differences, and learning goal articulation. Organizational recognition systems that value mentoring contributions in performance evaluations and advancement decisions. General Electric pioneered large-scale reverse mentoring in the late 1990s when then CEO Jack Welch required 500 senior executives to find younger mentors to teach internet technologies and digital trends. The program, initially focused on technical upskilling, evolved to address broader generational perspective taking. By 2010, GE had expanded the model to include 3,000+ reciprocal mentoring relationships globally, crediting the practice with accelerating digital transformation, improving innovation processes, and reducing executive-level insularity from frontline realities. Participants reported that relationship quality and mutual respect increased significantly when the program framed interactions as reciprocal learning rather than remedial training for senior leaders. Adaptive communication infrastructure. Communication preference variation across generations represents a frequent friction source. Yet organizations can design infrastructure that accommodates diverse styles without defaulting to lowest common denominator approaches. Research by Lister, 2018, examined communication modality preferences across 400 employees spanning 5 generations. While confirming some expected patterns, younger workers exhibited stronger preferences for instant messaging and video calls. Older workers favored email and phone conversations. The study revealed substantial within-generation variance and situational flexibility. Critically, satisfaction depended less on modality per se than on clarity about which channels to use for which purposes and organizational respect for diverse communication styles. Effective communication infrastructure in multigenerational organizations includes platform and protocol design, multimodal communication ecosystems that offer synchronous, instant messaging, video, and asynchronous, email, project management platforms, options with clear organizational guidance on appropriate use cases for each response time. Norm setting that establishes reasonable expectations, e.g. instant messages for urgent matters with 2-hour response expectations. Emails for non-urgent matters with 24-hour windows, rather than assuming constant availability. Meeting format diversification including traditional face-to-face sessions, hybrid video options, and asynchronous collaboration tools. With explicit inclusion practices ensuring all formats facilitate equal participation. Communication skills development that trains all employees on effective practices across modalities. Reducing assumptions that digital fluency equals communication competence. Accessibility and accommodation features that address age-related needs, adjustable font sizes, closed captioning, voice-to-text options. Without stigmatizing users, Deloitte redesigned its global communication infrastructure specifically to address multi-generational collaboration challenges in its 100,000+ person workforce. The firm established a communication choice architecture that designated primary channels for different communication types: instant messaging, Slack, for team coordination and quick questions, email for formal documentation and external communication, video conferencing for relationship building and complex discussion, and project management platforms, Asana, for workflow tracking. Critically, Deloitte paired technology implementation with mandatory communication across generations, workshops where employees explicitly discussed their preferences, assumptions, and adaptability boundaries. Post-implementation surveys showed 43% reduction in communication-related friction complaints and 31% improvement in cross-generational project team satisfaction scores within 18 months. Flexible work design and differential benefits optimization. Work arrangement preferences vary substantially based on life stage, caregiving responsibilities, health status, and individual personality, factors that correlate imperfectly with generational membership. Rather than designing generation-specific policies, leading organizations create flexible frameworks that allow personalized choices. Chen and Fulmer, 2018, studied flexible work arrangement effectiveness across age cohorts and found that autonomy in choosing arrangements mattered more than the arrangements themselves. Organizations offering cafeteria-style flexibility, where employees select from menus of schedule, location, and workload options based on individual needs, achieved higher satisfaction across all generations compared to those imposing age-based assumptions about preferred arrangements. Effective flexible work and benefit design includes flexibility infrastructure components, customizable schedule options ranging from traditional fixed schedules to compressed workweeks, flexible daily hours, and results-only work environments, with clear performance expectations decoupled from physical presence. Phased retirement pathways that allow gradual workforce reduction through part-time arrangements, project-based consulting, or seasonal employment rather than abrupt full retirement transitions. Caregiving support diversity addressing not only childcare, traditionally emphasized for younger workers, but also elder care, adult-dependent care, and personal health management across all age groups. Learning and development accessibility that provides tuition assistance, skills training, and career development resources to all tenure and age segments rather than concentrating investment in early career cohorts. Benefits personalization through flexible spending accounts, modular benefit packages, and opt-in, opt-out features that allow individuals to allocate resources toward their highest value needs. Michelin North America redesigned its manufacturing workforce policies to address retention challenges stemming from generational diversity in its 20,000 person operation. The company introduced career customization frameworks allowing employees to adjust work intensity, schedule, location, where feasible, and role scope across career stages. Older workers approaching retirement could reduce hours while mentoring newer employees. Mid-career workers with intensive caregiving responsibilities could shift to stable day schedules. And younger workers seeking rapid development could opt into rotational assignments. The system supported by technology platforms that matched operational needs with employee preferences, reduced turnover by 19% overall and 34% among workers over 55 within 3 years while maintaining production efficiency metrics. Generationally inclusive team composition and facilitation. Team formation and facilitation practices significantly influence whether generational diversity enhances or constrains performance. Research by Bell and colleagues, 2011. In their meta-analysis of team diversity effects found that surface-level diversity attributes like age enhance performance primarily when accompanied by specific facilitation practices that transform demographic difference into cognitive diversity. Organizations building high-performing multigenerational teams focus on intentional design and skilled facilitation rather than assuming diversity alone drives benefit. Team design and facilitation practices. Purposeful heterogeneity in team composition. Ensuring projects include diverse age perspectives rather than allowing homogeneous age clustering. While maintaining sufficient team size, typically 5 to 8 members, to prevent tokenization. Role clarity and contribution frameworks that explicitly define how each member's experience and perspective adds value. Preventing age-based assumptions about who should lead. follow, or contribute in which capacities facilitation training for team leaders in managing diverse communication styles, mediating value conflicts, and ensuring equitable participation rather than allowing dominant personalities or seniority to overwhelm discussion-structured decision-making protocols such as nominal group technique or democratic voting. Systems that prevent age-based hierarchy from automatically determining outcomes. Regular process checks where teams explicitly reflect on their collaborative dynamics. Surface emerging tensions early, and adjust working agreements as needed. Mercy Health System, a multi-state healthcare network employing 40,000 plus staff, restructured clinical quality improvement teams to ensure generational diversity after discovering that age-homogeneous teams repeatedly missed improvement opportunities visible to other cohorts. The organization established team composition requirements mandating at least 3 different generational cohorts on every improvement team, paired with facilitator training emphasizing inclusive dialogue practices. For example, one pediatric care team included a 67-year-old nurse practitioner with 40 years clinical experience, a 45-year-old physician mid-career, a 31-year-old data analyst, and a 24-year-old recent nursing graduate. By establishing explicit team norms, including round-robin speaking orders and strong opinions, loosely held mindsets, the team integrated traditional clinical wisdom with contemporary evidence-based protocols and patient experience data. The reconfigured teams generated 52% more implemented improvements compared to historical baselines, with particular success in solutions requiring both deep clinical expertise and technological innovation. Age bias reduction and inclusive culture development despite legal protections and organizational policies. Age-based stereotyping and discrimination persist as significant barriers to generational inclusion. Both too young bias, viewing early career workers as inexperienced, entitled or uncommitted, and too old bias, perceiving senior workers as inflexible, technologically incompetent, or resistant to change, undermines psychological safety and performance. Ng and Feldman, 2012, documented that age bias operates through multiple mechanisms: explicit discrimination in hiring and promotion decisions, microaggressions in daily interactions, exclusion from developmental opportunities, and internalized age stereotypes that reduce self-efficacy. Interventions must therefore address both structural systems and interpersonal behaviors. Evidence-based age bias reduction includes structural and cultural interventions, blind recruitment and evaluation processes that remove age indicators, graduation dates, lengthy experience descriptions, from initial screening stages, and use structured interviews focused on demonstrated capabilities rather than tenure or generational membership. Mandatory bias awareness training that moves beyond awareness raising to practice-based skill development in recognizing and interrupting age-based assumptions, with particular attention to subtle biases that well-intentioned individuals harbor. Inclusive language guidelines that discourage age-related descriptors, digital native, millennial approach, old-school thinking, in performance feedback, team discussions, and organizational communications. Diverse representation in leadership, decision-making bodies, and visible role modeling positions across age spectrums, signaling organizational commitment to age inclusion. Accountability metrics that track age diversity in hiring, promotion, development program participation, and retention, with leaders held responsible for equitable outcomes. PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, implemented comprehensive age bias reduction after internal surveys revealed that both early career and senior employees perceived age-based barriers to advancement and inclusion. The firm introduced generational intelligence as a core leadership competency, requiring all people managers to complete training on recognizing age bias, facilitating inclusive team dynamics, and creating equitable development opportunities. PwC also revised performance evaluation systems to anonymize demographic information during calibration sessions and established diversity councils with explicit age diversity representation. Within 3 years, the percentage of employees reporting age-based discrimination in internal surveys declined from 23% to 11%. While promotion rates across age cohorts converged toward parity after controlling for performance ratings and tenure. Building long-term organizational capability moving beyond immediate interventions. Organizations aiming for sustained multigenerational excellence must build structural capabilities that embed generational inclusion into core operating systems. 3 forward-looking pillars support this long-term orientation. Strategic workforce planning with generational intelligence. Traditional workforce planning models focus on headcount, skills gaps, and replacement ratios. Generationally intelligent workforce planning adds demographic transition analysis, knowledge transfer mapping, and succession diversity as core components. Leading organizations conduct generational transition scenarios that model workforce composition over 5 to 10-year horizons, identifying periods of concentrated retirement risk. Emerging skill requirements aligned with generational strengths. And recruitment needs to maintain optimal age diversity. These analyses inform proactive rather than reactive responses. For example, a scenario might reveal that 40% of a technical workforce will reach retirement eligibility within 7 years. Concentrated in specialized roles with 15-plus-year expertise development timelines. Generationally intelligent planning would trigger immediate responses, accelerated hiring to ensure mentorship overlap. Formalized knowledge capture systems, retention incentives for phased retirement rather than abrupt departure. And skills development programs preparing mid-career successors. Companies also implement knowledge network mapping to visualize expertise distribution across generations and identify critical knowledge holders whose departure would create organizational vulnerabilities. These maps inform targeted retention strategies, documentation priorities, and mentoring relationships. When expertise concentrates in aging cohorts without distributed successors, organizations can adjust project assignments to create broader exposure and accelerated development. Leading organizations embed these practices, demographic dashboards providing real-time visualization of workforce age distribution. Generational representation across functions and levels. And trending patterns that signal emerging risks or opportunities. Knowledge audit protocols that systematically identify critical expertise. Assess concentration risk, and prioritize transfer initiatives before retirement windows. Narrow succession planning. Diversity requirements ensuring that successor pools for all critical roles include multiple generational perspectives rather than defaulting to age-based assumptions about readiness or fit. Recruitment strategy. Diversification that sources talent across career stages. Avoiding inadvertent age clustering through narrow campus recruitment or senior-level external hiring. Purpose-driven culture and intergenerational value alignment. While different generations may express purpose through varying language and prioritize different manifestations, research consistently demonstrates that meaningful work motivates across age cohorts. Twenge et al. 2010. Organizations that anchor culture in shared purpose while honoring diverse value expressions create integrative frameworks rather than divisive generational competition. Glavers, 2016, examined purpose-driven organizations and found that when companies established clear mission connection to employee work, articulated values that transcended generational stereotypes, and created opportunities for all employees to contribute to meaningful outcomes, generational value differences diminished while shared commitment intensified. Effective approaches include mission clarity and accessibility that articulates organizational purpose in inclusive language resonating across generations rather than adopting vernacular associated with particular age cohorts. Intergenerational dialogue forums where employees explicitly discuss what meaning contribution and legacy mean to them personally, discovering commonalities beneath superficial linguistic or stylistic differences. Multipathway contribution models that allow purpose expression through various mechanisms, some employees through direct service delivery, others through innovation and improvement, still others through mentorship and knowledge transfer. Rather than privileging particular contribution styles, values-based leadership selection that prioritizes demonstrated commitment to inclusion, learning orientation, and collaborative excellence over generational membership. When choosing formal and informal leaders, organizations also benefit from examining purpose through a generational lifecycle lens. Early career employees often seek purpose through learning, growth, and impact on immediate projects. Mid-career professionals frequently find meaning in leadership, influence, and legacy building. Late-career individuals commonly prioritize contribution through mentorship, wisdom sharing, and organizational stewardship. When organizations create pathways for purpose expression across these life cycle stages rather than privileging early career models, all generations experience meaningful engagement. Continuous learning systems and reciprocal capability building. Learning and development systems traditionally concentrate resources on early career employees under assumptions that training investment yields longer return periods and that senior employees possess established skill sets requiring minimal augmentation. These assumptions prove increasingly obsolete in contexts of rapid technological change, evolving work methods, and extended careers. Coolidge and colleagues, 2011, demonstrated that training access and developmental opportunity predict retention, engagement, and performance across all age groups, with older workers showing particular sensitivity to perceived development investment. Organizations that maintain career-long learning cultures report sustained innovation, reduced obsolescence, and stronger retention across generations. Contemporary learning systems incorporate continuous learning infrastructure, universal learning entitlements providing annual development budgets, time allocations, and resource access to all employees regardless of age, tenure, or organizational level. Skill-based rather than credential-based development that emphasizes demonstrated capability acquisition over degree completion, enabling non-traditional learning pathways suited to diverse learning preferences. Peer-to-peer learning platforms where employees teach and learn from colleagues across generations, distributing expertise development beyond formal training programs. Microlearning and just-in-time resources that accommodate varied learning preferences. Some prefer intensive multi-day workshops while others favor brief, focused modules integrated into workflow. Learning community formation that creates cohorts mixing generations in educational experiences rather than age-segregating development programs. Organizations also increasingly recognize reciprocal capability building where each generation develops capabilities in areas of relative weakness while contributing strengths. For example, older workers might develop digital fluency, agile methodologies, and social media literacy while teaching strategic thinking, stakeholder management, and institutional knowledge navigation to younger colleagues. When organizations frame learning as reciprocal rather than remedial, participation increases and stigma diminishes. Technology companies, despite stereotypical association with youth orientation, increasingly model this approach. IBM established Your Learning platforms that provide personalized learning pathways for employees at all career stages, explicitly including senior technical professionals in advanced technology training while creating teaching opportunities for the same individuals in foundational domains. The company found that when senior engineers participated in cutting-edge training, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, blockchain, while simultaneously teaching software architecture fundamentals to early career developers, both knowledge transfer effectiveness and senior employee engagement increased substantially. Retention among technical staff over 50 improved by 27% after implementing reciprocal learning systems, while junior developers rated knowledge acquisition 34% higher when learning from experienced practitioners compared to external training vendors. Conclusion: the sixth-generation workforce represents both profound challenge and substantial opportunity for organizational leaders. As this article has demonstrated through research synthesis and organizational examples spanning healthcare, technology, manufacturing, and professional services, generational diversity's effects depend critically on management approach. Organizations that view generational differences as problems to minimize through segregation or homogenization sacrifice innovation potential, knowledge transfer benefits, and market insights. Conversely, organizations that intentionally leverage generational diversity through evidence-based practices, structured mentoring, adaptive communication, inclusive team design, bias reduction, and continuous learning systems, realize measurable performance gains while enhancing employee well-being across age cohorts. Several actionable principles emerge for practitioners: move beyond stereotypes to individual understanding. While generational frameworks offer useful starting points for understanding diverse workplace expectations, individual variation within cohorts often exceeds between cohort differences. Effective leaders engage employees as individuals with unique preferences, capabilities, and needs rather than assuming generational membership determines behavior. Design systems for inclusion rather than accommodation, rather than creating separate programs for different generations. Build infrastructure, communication platforms, flexibility policies, learning systems that accommodates diverse needs through choice and personalization. This approach avoids stigmatization while increasing utilization. Invest in reciprocal relationships and mutual learning. The most powerful intergenerational interventions create bidirectional benefit rather than positioning one generation as teacher and another as learner. Reciprocal mentoring, peer learning platforms, and collaborative problem-solving structures distribute value across age cohorts. Measure, monitor, and maintain accountability. Generational inclusion requires the same rigorous metrics, leadership accountability, and continuous improvement that organizations apply to other strategic priorities. Track demographic composition, engagement patterns, advancement equity, and retention across generations. Holding leaders responsible for inclusive outcomes. Embed generational intelligence in core capabilities. Long-term success requires moving beyond episodic interventions to integrate generational considerations into workforce planning, talent management, communication systems, and culture development as permanent organizational capabilities. As workforce demographics continue evolving, with Generation Alpha soon entering in larger numbers, baby boomers working into their 70s, and lifespan extension potentially adding 7th and 8th generations, organizational capability in leading multi-generational teams will increasingly distinguish high-performing organizations from struggling competitors. The evidence base provides clear direction. Organizations that approach generational diversity as strategic asset rather than unavoidable burden. Implement structured inclusion practices rather than relying on goodwill alone. And build reciprocal learning cultures will thrive in this new reality. Those that fail to adapt will face escalating friction, talent loss, and competitive disadvantage. The choice facing organizational leaders is not whether to address multi-generational workforce dynamics, but whether to address them reactively after costs accumulate or proactively as source of sustainable competitive advantage.